The Galactic Council had convened in unprecedented alarm. Messages from the outer colonies crackled through secure channels, each report more unsettling than the last. Humans, a species previously considered minor, were refusing to comply with standard diplomatic protocols. They had ignored formal invitations, dismissed emissaries, and flatly refused to enter any negotiations. Panic threaded through the halls of the Council, a nervous energy unfamiliar even to species accustomed to political machinations. Leaders who had spent centuries maneuvering through the delicate balance of galactic power now found themselves questioning their understanding of humanity. The humans' defiance was not merely passive, it was deliberate and precise. Where the Council expected hesitation, they found decisiveness. Where they anticipated fear, they saw calm determination. Communication from the human representatives was starkly concise, carrying an undertone of unwavering confidence that unsettled even the most seasoned negotiators. Other species, trained in subtleties, hints, and endless politicking, struggled to interpret this behavior. Some suggested it was bluffing, a calculated risk to buy time. Others feared it was a sign of deeper, untapped capability. Every prediction failed, every assumption crumbled. Within the council chambers, debates spiraled. The Virilians, insectoid strategists, argued that humans were an aberration, their refusal rooted in primitive stubbornness. The Ciliari, masters of psychic projection, insisted humans were manipulating perception itself, their silence a form of covert communication. The Zorathi, traders with centuries of experience in negotiation, proposed coercion, underestimating humans' resistance to intimidation. Every theory collided with the facts on the ground. Humans remained unmoved, unyielding, and singularly unbound by the conventions of interstellar diplomacy. Reports arrived of human activity along contested borders. They were not mobilizing massive fleets, nor were they engaging in aggressive acts. Instead, they were acting with an eerie efficiency, securing resources, fortifying positions, and creating contingencies with methods entirely alien to conventional military logic. The Council recognized patterns that seemed too sophisticated to be instinct alone. Humans leveraged the environment, anticipated alien responses, and optimized outcomes with startling precision. Panic grew as the realization spread. These humans were not merely uncooperative. They were unpredictable forces operating on an entirely different strategic wavelength. Counselors attempted to convene emergency summits to strategize. Messages were sent, envoys dispatched, fleets readied. Every effort met silence or calculated defiance. Human reasoning appeared immune to coercion, incentive, or subtle persuasion. As each day passed, the Council's internal tension thickened, alliances strained, old rivalries flared, and debates grew heated. Some species began to panic openly, fearing that their entire understanding of power and control had been undermined by a single, seemingly minor species. Amidst the turmoil, humans became something more than a tactical problem. They became a symbol of unquantifiable potential. The Council realized that no conventional approach would suffice. Humans were not monsters, not aggressors in the traditional sense, but a species that operated beyond established paradigms. Their refusal to negotiate was a challenge not to authority, but to the very assumptions that underpinned galactic governance. The first scheduled summit arrived, and the humans did not appear. Their absence was deliberate, a calculated statement that left the Council reeling. Delegates looked at one another, anxiety mirrored in countless eyes across species. Whispers filled the chambers. If humans could act so independently, what else were they capable of? The unknown magnitude of their intent pressed down, heavier than any fleet or weapon array. The Council faced a moment of stark clarity. Human defiance was not a temporary obstacle, it was the beginning of a paradigm shift. As panic settled into a tense vigilance, one truth became undeniable. Humans were rewriting the rules of engagement simply by existing on their own terms. Their refusal to participate in the established order, their unshakable resolve, and their enigmatic confidence were unsettling every species accustomed to predictable patterns. In the quiet moments between reports and deliberations, the Council recognized that they were witnessing the emergence of something profound. Humans were no longer merely a species among many, they were a question the galaxy had yet to answer, a challenge to every expectation, and a force the Council would have to reckon with, whether they were prepared or not. The Galactic Council had moved from confusion to desperation. Analysts scoured every report, every intercepted transmission, trying to decipher human intent. Nothing fit conventional logic. Humans ignored entreaties, defied expectations, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to anticipate the Council's maneuvers. Panic had become a constant undercurrent, and deliberations devolved into fractious arguments. Each species projected its own assumptions onto humanity, yet every theory collapsed under observation. The humans were neither predictable nor compliant, and the realization unsettled even the most confident leaders. Attempts at intimidation failed spectacularly. The Council authorized displays of force along human-controlled sectors, expecting caution, fear, or at least formal acknowledgement. Humans reacted with unexpected precision. They did not retreat, negotiate, or respond in anger. Instead, they adapted to every maneuver, turning supposed threats into strategic advantages. Fleets positioned to blockade human outposts found themselves bypassed, diverted, or rendered ineffective by unconventional tactics that exploited rigid alien doctrines. It became clear that humans operated with a strategic flexibility unknown elsewhere in the galaxy. The Council's intelligence network struggled. Reports were fragmented, conflicting, and often misleading. Humans moved swiftly and unpredictably, yet efficiently, making it impossible to forecast their actions. Virilian strategists insisted on overanalyzing minor patterns, while the Zorathi projected conventional battle logic onto fundamentally unconventional behavior. The Ciliari tried to probe human thought, only to encounter resistance in forms that could not be measured. Panic intensified as every assumption about human psychology failed, leaving the Council blind in its own system of intelligence. Alien diplomats debated desperate strategies. Economic sanctions, covert sabotage, psychological manipulation, all were considered and discarded after repeated failures. Humans did not operate under the expected pressures of resource dependency or political influence. They optimized their own networks, secured essential assets, and mitigated risks without consultation or reliance on external approval. The more the Council attempted to manipulate or control, the more evident it became that human decision-making was autonomous, efficient, and uncompromising. Some factions began to argue for preemptive strikes. Fear had evolved into a pervasive anxiety that human independence could not be contained. Yet even the threat of overwhelming force failed to elicit the expected response. Humans continued to act on their own principles, adhering to objectives that were methodical and deliberate, rather than reactive. Council members were forced to confront the unthinkable. The humans did not play by the rules of galactic diplomacy or conflict. They created their own. Within the Council, panic manifested in fracturing alliances. Long-standing coalitions splintered as members blamed one another for underestimating the humans. Petty rivalries resurfaced, and mutual suspicion hampered decision-making. The more chaotic the internal dynamics, the more humans solidified their position. Every failed strategy, every miscalculation, reinforced the perception that humans were operating on a plane beyond conventional comprehension. Despite rising fear, some voices acknowledged a grudging admiration. Humans were clever, adaptable, and morally resolute. Their culture favored autonomy, resilience, and practical intelligence over ceremonial posturing. While these traits destabilized the Council, they also showcased the type of power alien species had long dismissed. Observers noted that humans did not seek dominance in the traditional sense. They sought control over outcomes that mattered, leveraging ingenuity rather than overwhelming force. By the end of repeated failed interventions, the Council faced a sobering realization: humans were no longer a manageable problem. They had become a wild variable, a force that challenged every expectation. Fear was not rooted in aggression but in the unsettling clarity that humans would not conform, would not negotiate, and would act according to principles that others could neither predict nor fully understand. The Council's panic had shifted from tactical concern to existential unease, an acknowledgement that a species of this unpredictability could alter the balance of power across the galaxy. Humanity's refusal to yield, their silent yet unmistakable assertion of independence, was rewriting the rules of engagement. The Council, paralyzed by indecision, could only watch as humans continued their deliberate course, demonstrating a mastery of strategy and self-determination that rendered conventional response obsolete. In every chamber, across every planet, the same realization spread. Humans were not merely resisting, they were redefining what it meant to act with agency in a galaxy built on expectation, hierarchy, and compliance. Humans no longer remained passive anomalies. They began to actively reshape galactic expectations. Their actions were precise, calculated, and audacious in ways that alien civilizations struggled to comprehend. They did not mobilize for sheer display of force, nor did they rely on diplomacy to sway others. Instead, humans exploited the weaknesses and assumptions of alien systems, turning rigid structures into opportunities. Every move was methodical yet unpredictable, a paradox that left the Galactic Council scrambling to respond. Along contested borders, humans secured critical resources not by overwhelming fleets, but by anticipating supply chains, communication networks, and logistical dependencies. Alien forces, confident in their superiority, were repeatedly outmaneuvered. Blockades dissolved without confrontation, fleets found themselves misdirected, and colonies that should have been vulnerable remained firmly under human control. Humans leveraged terrain, timing, and information in ways that demonstrated strategic ingenuity far beyond their apparent technological limitations. Council intelligence analysts struggled to keep pace. Every pattern they identified was immediately countered by unexpected human adaptations. Attempts to plant misinformation or to provoke reactions were neutralized subtly, without visible confrontation. Humans anticipated the Council's assumptions, turning expectation into liability. Each success reinforced the perception that they were not merely clever, they were operating according to principles that transcended conventional strategy, principles rooted in observation, rapid learning, and flexible application. Beyond strategy, humans demonstrated a remarkable psychological insight. They understood that intimidation relied on predictability and fear of loss. By refusing to react to conventional pressures, they destabilized the Council's psychological control. Alien leaders found themselves second-guessing every decision, questioning the validity of centuries of precedent. Humans' calm defiance became a force multiplier, their independence magnified by the Council's own overreactions. The species had mastered a form of strategic influence that required no violence, only foresight, resolve, and audacity. Small-scale actions revealed humans' creativity in problem-solving. They formed alliances with unlikely partners, optimized scarce resources with precision, and redefined supply and communication strategies in ways that astonished observers. Where other civilizations relied on hierarchy and procedure, humans empowered initiative at every level. Decisions that would have required bureaucratic consensus elsewhere were executed swiftly and efficiently, demonstrating the adaptability and operational clarity that alien species lacked. Humans' moral clarity also played a role. They pursued objectives with a focus on practical outcomes rather than abstract ambition or political gain. Colonies were stabilized, populations protected, and resources secured with minimal collateral disruption. This pragmatic approach defied alien expectations of ruthlessness or manipulation. Observers realized that humans were not unpredictable in randomness, but in principle. They acted consistently according to a logic that the Council could not easily anticipate or disrupt. The cumulative effect of these actions sent shockwaves through the Council. Attempts to intimidate, coerce, or predict human behavior failed repeatedly. Entire divisions of alien strategists were rendered ineffective, their assumptions repeatedly undermined. The Council recognized a fundamental truth: humans were rewriting the rules. Conventional tactics were obsolete in the face of a species that combined adaptability, audacity, and moral resolve. Every maneuver reinforced the Council's sense of panic. Humans operated independently, deliberately, and with remarkable efficiency, leaving the aliens scrambling to formulate responses that had no guarantee of success. The galaxy watched as one species refused to conform, refused to negotiate, and refused to be coerced. Each success emboldened humans further, demonstrating that their power lay not in size, technology, or numbers, but in ingenuity, foresight, and the refusal to submit to external expectations. By the end of these operations, the Council had reached an uncomfortable acknowledgement. Humans were no longer merely resisting, they were setting a new standard. Their independence, creativity, and strategic mastery had destabilized centuries of galactic assumptions. In the quiet analysis rooms, in the heated debates, and across the nervous reports, the same realization spread: humans had become the measure against which every civilization would now be judged. Their audacity was not an anomaly, it was a paradigm, and the galaxy had no precedent for how to contain it. The Galactic Council teetered on the edge of chaos. Every calculated response to human activity had backfired, leaving factions divided and tempers frayed. Meetings that had once been orderly devolved into argument and recrimination, as each species blamed the others for underestimating humanity. Strategic councils fractured, alliances weakened, and long-standing rivalries resurfaced under the pressure of unprecedented unpredictability. Every day brought news of human maneuvers that challenged assumptions and defied conventional logic. Attempts to impose sanctions or restrictions produced no effect. Humans had secured vital supply chains and alternate routes, bypassing obstacles with remarkable efficiency. The Council's attempts at subversion, economic pressure, covert operations, misinformation, were countered before they could take root. In every instance, human foresight and adaptability nullified alien plans. What the Council perceived as threats or constraints were turned into advantages by humans, exploiting predictable alien reactions and rigid procedures. Alien leaders grew desperate, their panic intensifying with every failed strategy. Factions began advocating extreme measures, preemptive strikes, mass mobilizations, or forced compliance through intimidation. Yet every proposal carried the risk of escalating conflict without guarantee of success. Human settlements were not only resilient but strategically positioned to make any rash action costly. The Council's traditional tools of control had lost their potency. Anxiety spread through alien ranks as they realized that brute force alone could not coerce a species that thought and acted independently. The psychological impact on the Council was profound. Species accustomed to exerting influence over less organized civilizations found themselves questioning the very nature of power. Their projections of dominance proved inadequate. Humans could not be coerced or intimidated in conventional ways. Alien strategists, forced to recalibrate, recognized that their understanding of strategy, politics, and diplomacy was insufficient when applied to humans. Every human maneuver was a lesson in flexibility, innovation, and operational independence. Council deliberations revealed cracks in interstellar governance. Long-established hierarchies and protocols were irrelevant against human unpredictability. Members accused each other of negligence, of failing to anticipate human ingenuity, and of misjudging both capability and intent. Internal cohesion collapsed under the pressure of uncertainty. This fragmentation amplified humans' influence indirectly. The Council's disunity created gaps humans exploited without confrontation, strengthening their position further. Humans did not seek overt domination, yet their presence alone destabilized centuries of carefully maintained order. Their methods emphasized efficiency, ingenuity, and ethical pragmatism over brute strength or political manipulation. By refusing to negotiate or adhere to expected norms, humans exposed structural weaknesses in every system designed to maintain control and predictability. Council members observed, alarmed, as these weaknesses became operational liabilities exploited without overt aggression. Even intelligence networks failed to provide clarity. Every forecast underestimated human adaptability. Predictive models, simulations, and surveillance were rendered ineffective by a species that consistently operated outside expected parameters. Aliens struggled to comprehend that human success was not rooted in randomness but in principled reasoning combined with operational flexibility. Each miscalculation fueled Council panic, reinforcing the perception that humans were untouchable within the frameworks the galaxy had relied upon for millennia. As desperation mounted, the Council faced an existential reckoning. The humans' refusal to negotiate had evolved into an unstoppable demonstration of independence. Their strategic creativity, moral clarity, and adaptability exposed weaknesses in every alien assumption, every procedural norm, and every projection of control. Council members were forced to confront a simple truth: humans could not be forced, cajoled, or predicted. Their autonomy had rendered traditional approaches obsolete, and no faction possessed the insight or capability to contain them. By the end of these escalating failures, the Council's panic reached a peak. They were no longer merely dealing with a species outside their expectations. They were witnessing a paradigm that defied the very structures of power they had built. Human defiance had become a destabilizing force, not through aggression, but through a mastery of principle, strategy, and independence that left every alien system vulnerable to recalibration. Every plan faltered, every protocol failed, and the Council was forced to recognize that humans had become the uncontainable variable, the singular force reshaping galactic reality with nothing more than their will and ingenuity. The humans' defiance had shifted from anomaly to standard. The Galactic Council, fractured and exhausted, could no longer rely on precedent, coercion, or intimidation. Every effort to influence human behavior had failed, and in its place emerged a grudging recognition: humans were exceptional. Not exceptional because of overwhelming force, but because of their clarity of purpose, independence, and strategic ingenuity. Their refusal to negotiate had revealed a new paradigm of strength, one that the galaxy had never encountered. Human actions now dictated the rhythm of galactic affairs. Where the Council expected compliance, they found initiative. Humans had secured positions of influence without ever bending to alien expectation. Every alliance, every maneuver, every calculated adaptation reinforced a singular truth: humans acted according to principles of their own making. Alien species, accustomed to hierarchies and procedural predictability, could not anticipate these decisions. Humans moved on logic that was internally consistent yet external to any system the Council had designed. The Council's desperation slowly transformed into awe. Observers noted that humans were neither reckless nor indiscriminate. Their strategies were measured, principled, and adaptive. They anticipated challenges without rigidly adhering to precedent. They exploited opportunities without violating ethics, and they consistently optimized outcomes without compromising autonomy. Every victory, every evasion, every maneuver reinforced the notion that humans were a species defined not by power alone, but by mastery of principle and ingenuity. Smaller civilizations began to take notice. The humans' model of independence, adaptability, and audacity challenged traditional assumptions of hierarchy and compliance. Colonies that had once feared alien domination now studied human methodology, adopting elements of their decisiveness and operational flexibility. Humans' refusal to negotiate had not only disrupted the Council but had inspired a reevaluation of what effective leadership and strategy could mean across the galaxy. Within the Council, debate persisted, but the tone had shifted. Panic still lingered, but it was tempered by reluctant admiration. Humans were no longer just a problem. They had become the standard against which all species measured capability. Their presence forced alien civilizations to confront uncomfortable truths about rigidity, reliance on protocol, and the limits of coercion. Strategies developed over centuries had proven ineffective, replaced by human principles of independent action, rapid adaptation, and moral clarity. Humans' mastery of autonomy was further amplified by restraint. They did not seek universal conquest or domination. Their power lay in the ability to act decisively, maintain clarity of purpose, and adapt to any situation without surrendering core values. This combination of competence and ethical focus created an influence that was profound and pervasive. The Council realized that the threat humans posed was not mere aggression. It was a demonstration that a species could achieve unparalleled impact without conforming to galactic norms. The final realization settled across the Council. Humans had rewritten the rules without uttering a single word in compliance. Their refusal to negotiate was not defiance for its own sake, but an assertion of principle and operational sovereignty. They were shaping galactic dynamics by existing on terms defined entirely by themselves, forcing every civilization to reckon with the consequences of unpredictability, initiative, and integrity. As reports filtered in, the pattern was unmistakable. Humans continued to secure objectives, innovate strategies, and expand influence, all while maintaining autonomy and moral clarity. Every council plan, every prediction, every manipulation attempt had been met with human initiative. Their audacity had become a blueprint, their independence a standard, and their influence an undeniable force in galactic affairs. The Council understood, finally and fully, that humanity's refusal to negotiate was not a challenge to be overcome, but a paradigm to be acknowledged. In the end, the humans' silent assertion of autonomy became the defining factor in the galaxy's political landscape. They had demonstrated that strength was not only measured in fleets or weapons but in ingenuity, principle, and unyielding self-determination. The Council, once paralyzed by panic, now recognized that humans had become the measure of excellence, the standard against which all civilizations would be judged, and the living embodiment of a new galactic order.